Welcome back to another episode of the Clappercast. I'm your host, Burke, and as always, I'm joined by my friend Sean. Oh, wait a minute. Sean's actually not here this time. This is going to be my first solo episode, so buckle up. It could get a little weird. I'd like to do something a little different this week. Without my co-host to bounce back and forth about how the series are doing, I thought we could talk about some different things. There's been a few things that have come up recently in this past week, which just kind of show there's some things that are bigger than hockey. And I want to start off today's episode by extending my condolences to the Hawerchuk family. Dale Hawerchuk, of course, passed away today, August 18th, 2020, after succumbing to his battle with stomach cancer. It's pretty sad. Dale Hawerchuk is of course, a legendary Winnipeg Jet player. He's pretty renowned for being just an all-around amazing human. But on the ice, he had a very impressive 16-year career where he had over 1,000 games played, 1,188 games played with 1,409 points. Some pretty remarkable numbers. He played, of course, for the Winnipeg Jets, where he's most well known, but he also played for the Buffalo Sabres for a number of years. He played for the Blues and the Flyers for a couple short stints, but wherever he went, very well liked. He was also a beast in playoffs, where he had 97 games played and 99 points. So very, very impressive and clutch player. He's well known for his performances in two Canada Cups in 1987 and 1991, where one of them he was named MVP of a game, which is impressive when you have Mario Lemieux and Wayne Gretzky on the same team. When someone passes away, it's always, of course, very sad. So again, my condolences to the Hawerchuk family. So he's only 57, so way, way, way too soon. But that kind of brings me to today's kind of topic, if you want to call it that, is that there's things that are bigger than hockey. And Sean and I, of course, are huge hockey fans and live and breathe hockey, and that's why we started this whole podcast. But even we have to admit there's things that are much larger than the game of hockey. We're very excited that hockey's back, but the passing of Dale Hawerchuk and a few other things that have happened this week have really brought that to light. The next thing that kind of speaks to that is Claude Julien, head coach of the Montreal Canadiens. He was brought out of the bubble, and it was said that he was experiencing chest pains, and he had to get some emergency surgery done. So Kirk Muller, associate coach, took over as head coach. The next game that the Montreal Canadiens played, they won 5-0 against the Philadelphia Flyers. So it's kind of one of those things where, like, you could almost tell that they were going to win that game. If I was a betting man, I should have put money on it. But, they came out and played for Claude just to win one for him. Marc Bergevin said, the coaching staff didn't win the first qualifying round against the Penguins. The players did. I take a little bit of an issue with that. I mean, coaching obviously is a huge part of it, but, it was a kind of a rallying cry for the players that, we can still do this without our head coach. But it came out that Claude Julien had to have a stent put in his heart, and that he's actually going to be out for the rest of this series. So he went home to recover. Another one of those things where it's, your health is obviously more important than standing on a bench in a fanless arena. I mean, even if there was fans there, you've got to put your health first. And I really hope the Canadiens can, rally and continue to play well. I mean, they've been struggling a little bit since that game to score, but it's tough for Claude Julien to have to leave the team. I'm sure he would rather be there than probably laying in a bed and healing from heart surgery. That is what it is. The other thing that you got to put first is family. And we had Tuukka Rask hours before a game say that he was opting out of the rest of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And it was kind of a shock. It was kind of surprising for most people. He'd been making every start for the Bruins. The Bruins didn't look too sharp in the round-robin games. But once they got into their series against Carolina, Rask looked pretty good. The Bruins kind of snapped back into it a bit. But as I mentioned, Rask kind of blew up the hockey world by saying, I'm opting out. And he said, there's, I have to put my family first. And I was a little disappointed in the reaction amongst most fans that I saw online. Most people were saying, Tuukka Rask is a head case. He's always been one. He's soft. His heart's not in it. Things like that, where people were criticizing him as a person rather than his play, which, people are no stranger to that either with Tuukka Rask. But he's an incredible goalie, and we have no idea what's going on with his family. He doesn't have to tell anyone what's going on with his family, but he has a right to do that. And the response from the Bruins has been super positive. They've said that, there's a quote here from Don Sweeney, who said, I don't think this is any big surprise to us. This has been a difficult decision for Tuukka. The Boston Bruins are in full support of why he made this decision. There's a number of other quotes like that from other people in the Bruins organizations, whether it be players or the head coach. So, the team's very, very supportive of him. Of course, they have backup extraordinaire Jaroslav Halak, who's an exceptional goalie in his own right. He has single-handedly won some series in the past for other teams. He's had a really good season as well. So I'm sure that this decision was made a bit easier for the team, that they have a competent goaltender to replace Tuukka. But, it is quite sad to see people jumping down Rask's throat. I mean, he came in, it was probably, as Sweeney mentioned, a tough decision for Tuukka to leave, but it was also probably a tough decision for him to even come in the first place. He had an interview a day before he announced his decision that, it didn't feel like playoffs to him. He didn't feel the urgency, and that life in the bubble was challenging. And I'm sure there's a lot of other players that are experiencing similar issues where, you have players like Sean Couturier, who just had a baby with his wife, like days before having to leave to go into the bubble and not being able to see them. It's really hard. I mean, it's easy for us as fans who, we're experiencing our own challenges right now due to COVID, but, we're making an assumption here, but most people probably aren't, kept away from their family for an indeterminate amount of time where you have no idea when you'll see them again in person in a different city. I mean, there might be some people who work, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off or something like that, where that is a challenge, but that would be something that you would have signed up for in the beginning. So I think it's really easy to criticize Tuukka Rask, but it's just not the right thing to do. I mean, you have to remember he's a person before he's a hockey player, and it's very narrow-minded to judge him on a decision that we don't have all the information on. I think you just have to trust him that he's doing the best thing for him and his family, and that's untouchable to criticize. No one can touch him for that. There wasn't that much outrage about players who opted out from the very beginning, so why should we criticize players who are opting out now? They've tried it. Something may have happened back home. So, that toxic aspect of sports fandom is pretty pronounced. And this was one of those events where we saw it in probably one of its worst forms. So I hope everything is okay with Tuukka and his family, and I wish him all the best. And then, as I mentioned, Jaroslav Halak is a very competent goalie, and he's looked good. I mean, Boston had a crazy game against Carolina, where they were down 2 goals going into the third, and they rallied and came back and won. So, again, just like the Montreal Canadiens kind of won that game for Claude, perhaps they were a little bit inspired. Let's win this for Tuukka and show that, we're still in it. And I thought that was a good bounce back for Boston. It was impressive to see. The bubble life. So you have players like Tuukka Rask saying it's a challenge. You also see a lot of social media posts from teams trying to say, how the players are staying busy and how they're doing X, Y, Z with their teammates. But it's got to be a challenge. It's got to be really hard, really tough to not see your family. But the scheduling, I think, is going to start to wear down on players. Normally the Stanley Cup playoffs scheduling is play, you have a day off, and then you play again. Maybe you'll have a 2-day wait. But we're starting to see more teams play back-to-backs, as in they play one day and then they play the very next day. And that's got to be tough, especially when you have games going to 5 OT, like you have Columbus and Tampa Bay. Almost said Toronto. And that's got to wear on you. I don't know if players are able to recover that fast. You have teams like Vancouver and St. Louis, where Vancouver plays a very fast game. They have that speedy breakout, quick chances, and then you have St. Louis that kind of plays that slower, wear you down, cycle game. Vancouver is going to be totally affected more than St. Louis on playing back-to-backs because they play a fast, all-out game. Just kind of brings to mind some questions about the scheduling and if that's the best thing to do for the players. I know we want to condense the whole Stanley Cup tournament into a short amount of time, but is that really the best thing to do? I don't know. I'm not sold on it. I'm not a big fan of the back-to-backs. It seems like there's not enough time to recover as a player, but also as a fan. It's crazy to be elatious, just super pumped about a win, and then you got to go right back into it. Also, the games are at weird times, so you might miss it, or you might have to listen to it on the radio or something the very next day. So it's just a bit of one of those weird things about this whole setup. And then another thing is that we didn't have Hockey Night in Canada. So kind of strange we had no Canadian teams Hockey Night in Canada on the Saturday. Considered for this. I know it's probably all done. We had no very special notice, but Sportsnet. Hockey Night in Canada is kind of one of those pillars of growing up and being a hockey fan. It means something. It's very important. So kind of sad that wasn't considered. Especially because a lot of fans aren't able to watch the games this year because of their work schedule or whatnot. So kind of a missed opportunity there by the NHL to showcase some of the Canadian teams and draw in, a large audience, or at least give those fans a chance to watch on the weekend. So kind of weird there. Yeah, I definitely miss the original CBC Hockey Night in Canada with the original theme song. It was such a classic growing up moment for me. It's just one of those beautiful moments, watching Hockey Night in Canada with your family and just being so super pumped to watch as a kid. Hopefully, it's not a long-term thing, that it will come back, but sad to see it gone right now. But I got to give Sportsnet props for bringing on board Kevin Bieksa in a full-time role here. So he's been really exciting to have on the broadcast team in between intermissions and pregame and postgame. I think he's bringing, obviously some humor to the broadcast, dishing out shots to Friedman and Ron. But I actually think that the experience of a D-man on the broadcast team is something that we rarely see. We always see goaltenders or forwards being in on the broadcast, and it's awesome to have that other perspective of a defenseman who recently played in the NHL too, someone who's retired just a few years ago, who knows how the game's played, and it can break down a play and give you kind of insight into why a player might have done something, or what they could have thought was happening on the play. We have like Kelly Harudi, who's was a great goaltender in the stand-up era, who gives his insight onto what a goalie might be thinking. But the game is played so differently now than it used to be, and he doesn't know what a defenseman could be thinking. And they have Colby Armstrong on there, and a number of other people who've played forward, but Kevin Bieksa, Juice, has been great. I think it's really cool to see, especially as someone who plays defense themselves. It's awesome. I like it, just to have that kind of player's perspective. Also, the humor's definitely appreciated on my end. Kind of reminds me of how Tony Romo came in as a commentator for the NFL and how he blew people away by being able to predict what plays were going to happen, like before they even happened, and just his insight as a professional player. Like, he could just blow away what was going on. He could break it down to such a degree that was super impressive. And then, Kevin Bieksa was a great defenseman. You might not like him as a fan of other teams, but you have to admit that he played at a very high level. He made it to the NHL, and he played with some amazing players. So even to get there, you have to have such a high hockey IQ and to last in the league for as long as he did. So props for him to beginning the second half of his career here as a color commentator, essentially. So that's been cool. And to kind of change gears here a bit, I thought I could start speaking a little bit about my favorite team, the Washington Capitals. So they've been super disappointing so far. They had a pretty lackluster round robin where they won one game against the Boston Bruins to, secure the third spot and to play the Islanders. And they have looked really bad. I mean, they're playing right now as I speak, and they're down 2-0 midway through the first, and they're down 3-0 in the series already. And in the first two games, they went up, they had a lead, blew it in really spectacular fashion. They've blown a lot of plays at the far blue line, let the Islanders blow in, score. They could have put it away in overtime, didn't. It's been really frustrating to watch as a fan because you can tell that the players aren't into it. They're just not as dedicated as they were on that Magic 2018 Cup run. And I think a lot of it has to do with Todd Reirden. As much as it pains me to say that, I was never a fan of the fact that the Capitals let Barry Trotz walk. I thought they should have paid the man. I mean, he got them to the finals. He got them to the second round pretty much every year until they broke through and finally won. And it was really sad to just let him go because he wanted money, and he was owed that money. And he went to the Islanders, and what do you know? Oh, the Islanders turned their team completely around. They become one of the best defensive teams in the league. They've obviously helped a lot by goaltending, but when Barry Trotz left, he brought his entire staff, except for Todd Reirden, the defensive specialist, who became the head coach in Washington. So he brought with him his goaltending coach, Mitch Korn, who has worked with him from his Nashville days, who has coached Pekka Rinne, Braden Holtby. He's turned them around when they've struggled. He's helped them out a lot. He's lauded as one of the best goaltending coaches in the league. You saw him work his magic with Robin Lehner, Semyon Varlamov, Thomas Greiss. It's been magic to watch them turn around to become that best defensive team. They play a really solid game where they make you pay on the mistakes that you make. They aren't playing the most exciting style of hockey, as Sean and I have mentioned in previous podcasts, but they make you pay when you mess up. And that's something that Washington does not do anymore. They don't have that strong system. Their power play has sucked in the series and in the regular season. It was the worst it's been in a number of years. So I'm fully on board. I was fully on board keep Barry Trotz, and now I've probably got 1 foot in on fire Todd Reirden, because he has just not been able to motivate this team. He looks like Kevin from The Office. It seems like he puts in the same amount of effort into his job. It's kind of one of those teams that's coasting on the talent of the players, I think, and it's a case of hard work beats talent when talent isn't working hard, to use a cliche, but I think that's what this series is. And as much as it would be easy to put it on Braden Holtby, he's he's made some good saves. Would it have been nice to have Ilya Samsonov here rather than nursing an injury from an ATV accident? Yes, it would be. But I don't think this one comes down to Braden Holtby. I think he's sadly going to be gone after the end of the season, and his numbers won't look amazing, so he might not get what he's looking for. But I think they're going to have to shake things up in Washington to stay a competitive team. They should be doing much better than they are. They should not be down 3-0 in this series as, the third best team, so to speak, in the East coming into playoffs. They're just getting outworked and not capitalizing on their opportunities, and it's tough to watch as a fan. We kind of thought we got over the hump when they beat the Penguins, and then we had the disappointing loss to the Carolina. This is worse. Last year they looked like they were trying. This year they're not. It's really rough to watch. Lots of stupid penalties. I don't know if this team thinks that they're owed, an easy path to the championship, but this is probably going to be one of the hardest cups to win. And, if they're struggling this bad, I don't know. I think there's a lot of other teams that look a lot better. So we'll see what happens with that. I kind of am hoping that Todd Reirden is at least feeling the flames on his butt a little bit at this point. His seat might not be super hot, but could get a lot hotter. Just heard that siren in the background. Must be a crazy 5-alarm fire going on here in the city. But I think that's going to wrap things up for me on the Clappercast this week. Thanks for joining me on this strange, unique, one-off solo episode. You can find our Instagram at Clappercast Media, and you can also find us on Facebook. Please like and follow our content to stay up to date on all hockey news. And me and Sean will be back at you with more hockey talk soon.